So I just want to introduce myself. I'm Nina, and with me is Rinky, our 007 of IT program management. And today we're going to talk about the background, the journey from Plan View to MS Project Online, and our keys to success. If you want to advance to slide 4.
Do you see the Santa Clara County slide?
No, not yet.
Issue.
There we go. There we go.
I'm not going to put it in landscape. There's some issue when I do that.
Okay, we can stick here. That's great. So Santa Clara County. I just want to give you a little bit of background about us, about the organization we serve and the business lines. So this is beautiful Santa Clara County, and this is home of one of California's famed 21 missions left by the Spaniards before California became a state. And in Santa Clara County, we have San Jose, one of the densest cities in the state. 50% of the population is within the city of San Jose. Now, Santa Clara County is most famous because it is Silicon Valley, the epicenter of technology, and it is quite wealthy because of the origin and proliferation of these companies, which you see here over the past decades. And it is also home to a few great universities, Stanford University, Santa Clara University, and San Jose State. And we are surrounded by a lot of talent, but the competition is still very fierce with all these career and work options for graduates. Of course, it's not home to the greatest California university, that's UC Berkeley, and that's across the bay. Go Bears. Next slide. All right, a little about the landscape. So the County of Santa Clara is the third largest employer in Silicon Valley. Apple Incorporated in Cupertino is first with 25,000 employees, and Alphabet Incorporated and Google in Mountain View have 23,000 local employees. So that makes us third with about 18,500 employees. Our IT department, about 800 strong employees, does its best to support the 800 major business capabilities across the agencies. These business capabilities are supported by approximately 1,300 enterprise-level applications, 50,000 user devices across the landscape keeps us busy, and our service desk handles approximately 180,000 tickets a year. And yes, there is always a severe shortage of service desk employees to handle the volume, and we are hiring, and let me know if you're interested after the presentation. As we look at what's under all those business lines, we will see large-scale investments into infrastructure to support all of this, and we are continually trying to move off-prem into the cloud, and that is an ongoing initiative that will probably never go away in our lifetime. We are now an organization that has consolidated over the past 3 years. We are a new organization, so we've consolidated in the past 3 years. In 2015, there were 300 people in the information technology department, and today there are 800 people. And with that, we inherited all the investments made over the past 20 to 30 years. So you can bet that we are focused on modernization and standardization at this stage in our existence. The 200 active projects reflect this effort, and I want to dive a little deeper into that portfolio right now. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of our project portfolio. It's large. There's 112 active projects, 28 approved projects, which means they have not yet started but are funded. 226 canceled, closed, completed, or placed on hold projects. And what I want you to understand here is that this portfolio is large because there was zero governance in the past. There were no evaluative indicators to filter the proposals appropriately, and now we are somewhat saddled with too many commitments and not enough resources. So a year ago, we couldn't have told you about this portfolio with this level of granularity because we didn't have the right kind of data to do this. We had to make some major changes over the past 18 months, and I want to discuss those with you before we talk about the implementation of our new tool. Next slide. So I want to quickly talk about where we were in winter 2019 pre-pandemic, 18 months ago, more or less. We were a centralized project management office with a huge portfolio, but the business lines we support, public safety and justice, think jail management and probation modernization efforts, financial and HR systems, think PeopleSoft and SAP, 3 hospitals, think Epic and hundreds of enhancements and integrations annually, social services, think software that supports benefits for marginalized or at-risk populations, foster children, veterans, lots of data, lots of integrations, and bespoke software. And a smattering of smaller offices within the chief executive officer's wing. Think elections, legal software, and the coroner's office. So very distinct, vast vastly different business lines. So these directors, which are part of our organization and run these IT teams, have had no control over the project delivery teams because they were centralized. They were reliant on the enterprise PMO to balance resources and deploy project managers as needed across all of these business lines. This was an absolute recipe for failure, and mostly because we didn't possess the maturity required to do this, and there were too many business lines that required domain expertise. So couple that with zero governance to manage the intake, we said yes to everything. And to make it worse, our project delivery rate is low. We don't complete projects and we don't get efforts done. Rather, there was a lot of languishing and rollover of money happening. Oversight of the active portfolio was practically non-existent. So the culmination of all this amounted to a bloated portfolio where projects go to die. And that got us into trouble with everybody. Next slide. So obviously, now that we know all these things, what did we do? So we did a few things. First, we moved to a decentralized model. The project delivery teams went out to the directors that were closest to the business lines. Now the directors are responsible for project delivery. At the enterprise, we are responsible for governance. At the enterprise, we control governing all of the portfolio. We control the intake. We work with the architecture team to evaluate proposed solutions. We put forth the indicators by which to measure the projects and programs, and we control the funding and the flow of money. And we built the decision-making body, the IT Governance Committee. The CIO is the chair of that committee, and its membership is made up of 13 business leaders from across the county. And the big takeaways here is we centralize the governance, we centralize the data, we centralize the decision-making, but we decentralize the delivery. So those project teams now live with these IT directors in the business lines I mentioned earlier. Next slide. Finally, we developed a new strategic plan, and that has many of the elements that I spoke of earlier, and it's allowed us to stick with the work and formally evaluate how we were doing against our plan. Further, and this is most important as we kind of hone in on the implementation of the tool, it's tightened and aligned the portfolio to an actual strategy, meaning the indicators we score the proposals by are reflective of a larger strategy, and the active portfolio indicators allow us to maintain a healthy portfolio. So now I'm going to hand it off to Rinki Bhattacharya, one of our strongest and most capable on our team, and she will talk to you about the tool, MSPPM, which was fundamental to our journey, and the implementation was led by her. Over to you, Rinki.
Thank you, Nina. So I'm going to talk about our journey from the PlanView PPM tool to where we are today, which is the Microsoft Project Online. I'm going to talk about some challenges and how we approach this project. So what were some of our biggest challenges that we had to overcome in this project? One, and you'll see in more detail, we had a very short project timeline. We had a very limited project team, and we had very large number of stakeholders, as Nina just mentioned. Given that we have 18,000 plus employees within the county in each vertical, each one of them was a stakeholder in this project because end of the day, they own the projects that this new tool would help them manage. There were vertical specific challenges given how Santa Clara County has various agencies with varied objectives like health and hospital, public safety and justice. You can imagine the needs for public safety and justice and health and hospital are not the same. So they had to be met with a single tool. And on top of everything else, due to COVID, it was a completely virtual implementation. That said, what was the project approach? And as you can see in the bottom, the largest uplift was in the first 3 phases, which was the analysis and design, the build and validate, and the deployment, which was done over 19 weeks. So the key to the analysis and design phase was the detailed functional technical requirements, the design documentation, and the stakeholder review, making sure no one is missed, no requirements are missed. And of course, requirements are prioritized. And then the functional configuration requirements and the project schedule were key documents or key outputs of this phase. And then the build validation phase, yes, configuration of the PPM tool in the dev environment, validation sessions by a core team, and as needed configuration updates. So the core team worked side by side with the vendor, which was Fragility, to do the in-depth testing in dev environment before the users were involved. And the deployment, and I'll go into more detail about that. The deployment happened vertical by vertical. We did not do a big bang approach because we realized it would never work. If we got 200 PMs in a room and set them loose on an application, it would not work. So we did it vertical by vertical, and we did role-based training, which was also key. So based on the security groups we defined, the training was done based on the roles that we defined as well. And then transition and support, which was done over 10 weeks, which was very important, and I think which played a key role in our project success, is the staggered rollout, holding office hours, one-on-one, providing one-on-one help, providing huge amount of training material, recording all our trainings, posting everything on our intranet site, all of that helped. And of course, maintaining a configuration change log, which was key so that any change is documented and is traceable later. So what was the project overall timeline? As I mentioned earlier, it was a very short timeline, given the scope and the number of stakeholders involved. It was 7 months, literally, from the kickoff, which happened August 3rd, to the project completion, which was February 26th. It was 7-month timeline and included major holidays such as Thanksgiving and Christmas, when users were literally unavailable. So as you can see, the major phases or the major steps that we took was, and the outputs were the solution requirements document generation from the requirements gathering sessions, setting up the dev instance, validating the dev instance, and then moving into production. And then we started the phased rollout where we actually involved the users. And then we transitioned over to support from day one. We created our own internal support team, and we went through a whole ticketing process, and that was our transition. So what were the steps that we took per vertical to make sure we didn't miss anything? One is identifying project attributes. And first of all, as Nina mentioned, in plan view, we weren't even sure what the active portfolio was. So the first step was to identify which projects we need to bring into the PPM tool. It was not really replacing plan view because, as Nina mentioned, PlanView did not have any data, accurate data. So it was literally recreating these projects in Microsoft Project Online. So identifying projects, identifying project attributes, identifying resources. That was the biggest step. That was the first step that we did, and that took us the longest because most of these projects either had skeletal information in PlanView or incorrect information or did not even exist in PlanView before. Then the next step was the role-based training by vendor, which is Fragility. And that was very important because we had separate sessions for PM, separate sessions for resource managers, separate sessions for executives, which were focused on their role. We had multiple sessions, and then we had sessions where the users could drop in if they missed something, if they had questions, etc. Then we helped the PMs create their project schedules in MPP format. As I said before, some of them were not familiar with Microsoft Project. So creating those schedules, as we all know, which is the backbone of the project, was the main step next. And then reviewing, updating projects that were imported into the PPM tool. And then transition over to support. So we repeated each of these steps for every single vertical until all verticals were live, and then we could say that the project was complete. So let's see some of the results of this implementation. As Nina mentioned before, in plan view, we had no view into the active portfolio. We had no way of telling you how many active projects we had, what was on hold. We had no visibility before. But as part of this implementation, we also implemented Power BI reports and dashboards. And today, with one click of a button, we can look at our active portfolio. And as you can see, we have built these dashboards, which are live, which are updated. We have a data feed from our PPM tool into Power BI, which is refreshed every 2 hours. So with a click of a button, we are able to see what the active portfolio looks like. We have various slices and dices. We have program views. This is the Bridges program, which is, the largest TSS or largest funded program that our IT department owns, and many critical projects, the PPM tool implementation being one, falls under this program. So we have created ways to group projects into programs and created views to see issues, risks, program health, as well as the details of the project itself. So we are also tracking the health trend of individual projects. You can see on the left-hand side who the project manager is, and by project, we can look at the percent complete, the start finish, what is the current status, and we can see overall health for a certain period of time. This report can be filtered by vertical. So this is another report that we have built. And of course, we have started rolling out resource management. Our largest vertical, health and hospital, has really taken up this assignment, and they are managing all the resources, all the project related work within the PPM tool. So we have built these reports where they're able to see by resource manager what the resources are assigned to, what is their capacity, what is their assignments down to the project level. And there are various slices and dices available of this report as well. So this is just one glimpse of the report. There are many others. There are many dashboards. There's a portfolio level view. There are many, many others that we have built. Today, the project reporting is out of Power BI. It's no longer PMs going off and creating random slide decks. We have moved away from that thanks to this implementation. So what were some of the keys to our success, or some takeaways that we can share and which may help others who are on a similar journey or planning a similar journey? Number one, we clearly defined scope. I think that was key, because initially when this project was kicked off, as you can imagine, with a county our size and with varying needs in various verticals, it was most important to make sure the scope is defined, clarified, and contained. Then, as I said before, the staggered rollout approach, we did not go big bang. I think if we had, we would not have succeeded. We did it vertical by vertical, even from the training to the requirements, everything was focused on each vertical. The training by roles was also key, because if it doesn't really relate to you and I train you on something, you will not remember, you would not pay attention. So that was very important, to define the roles and separate out the training instead of having everyone together at the same time. Then we held, as I said before, holding office hours by vertical. Specific hours for each vertical where a PM or anyone, any resource manager, anybody could just drop in and ask a question, because people sometimes do not speak up in larger groups. And then detailed project site with the training material, videos, documentation, and we are still keeping that updated. We are constantly adding material to it, and it's a huge source of information for us. And for any new PM joining the county, you can point them to this site for training. And of course, the project team being available for support round the clock. I think these were the keys to our success, and of course, the support of our vendor Progility in this journey as well. So that is all I had. Any questions?
Nina and Rinki, thank you guys both so much. We are going to be saving the questions for after our second client presentation. So
Okay.
again, if anyone has any questions specific to Rinky and Nina and the County of Santa Clara, please save them until after our next presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Awesome. So next up, I'd like to introduce you all to Ned Henson, who is the manager of the IT PMO at Dominion Energy down in Richmond, Virginia. He's been with Dominion for 16 years as an IT project manager and has been the manager of the PMO since 2016. Prior to working with Dominion Energy, Ned was working for Mapcom Systems, where he developed and marketed a geographic information system for use in the telecom and utility worlds. Outside of work, Ned is a husband, father, musician, dog lover, e-skateboarder, and an e-unicyclist. And to top it all off, he's the former vice mayor of Ashland, Virginia. So Ned, thank you. We're honored to have you here today. I'm going to pass the floor over to you.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here. Can we see and hear?
We can see your screen, Ned. Yep.
Okay, very good. Just a little agenda for the things I'll talk about here. A quick overview of the project and Dominion. Talk about a few of the challenges we faced as we implemented the project and how we overcame those, and how we got people to buy into the system. And then finally, a couple of ideas for where we want to take this thing next. So off we go. First, we needed a snappy name for the system, so we had a contest. The winner was PACE, which stands for Planning, Accountability, Control, and Execution, which are very project-y sounding words that are forceful and appeal to upper management. So this was a good name for the system. We were replacing a fairly strong in-house system, but the system had reached the end of its life and the end of its capabilities. In the beginning, as we first started talking to Progility, we started with the big full vision of how this whole thing was going to work. As our plans collided with reality, we made some adjustments, pulled back a few things, and focused on really some of the basics that we wanted to deliver, which were high-level project metrics and labor and expense management. We're integrated with our SAP system, where we pull actual costs and hours, and then the Power BI part of the system ties it all together and is in fact where most people who are not planning projects live, in the Power BI portion of this. A little bit about Dominion Energy. Our business is to deliver reliable, affordable, clean, and safe energy. If I were giving this presentation 5 years ago, you probably would have not seen the word clean in there. The energy sector is really changing extremely rapidly, and you see us focusing on reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050, key part of Dominion's strategy. And to get there, a huge focus on innovation, and that innovation and change translates directly into IT projects. So it's an exciting time to be a project manager at Dominion, where we're the third largest solar producer in the country. We're working on building what will become the largest offshore wind implementation in the Western Hemisphere. We run the largest pumped hydro storage facility, which is really the largest battery on Earth. And every time we build one of these things, or infrastructure to support it, it turns into an IT project. So each of us in the PMO can have a line of sight directly from the day-to-day work we do to things we read about in the newspaper and hear our CEO say. As far as a little bit of metrics about Dominion, we have 7 million customers, 16 states, 17,000 employees, market capitalization and sales. And then as far as the IT organization, there are about 1,200 of us in IT. And when I say IT, that includes both the application side of the house as well as the infrastructure side of the house. Application is broken into little IT departments, for example, a customer service IT department that focuses just on our billing and call center kind of stuff, or a generation that focuses on all the generation systems. Infrastructure, of course, what you typically think of as IT. And then our PMO itself, we have right now about 54 project managers, varies a little bit, 823 active projects covering about $500 million. We add about 40 new projects a month, and the project size ranges from $100,000 up to our largest one in flight right now is $180 million complete replacement of a massive customer system. So one additional note, we have 54 official project managers in the PMO. We also have what I call accidental project managers, people in other, say, supervisory manager roles who also run perhaps more upgrade kinds of projects or things that are not as visible, say, as other projects. And those are managed through our system as well, but are managed by approximately another 50 people outside the PMO. These are 50 additional users of our system. As far as the background of the system itself, the PMO was set up in 2013, and we built an in-house system then that was Excel-based, SharePoint on the back end. It still pulled in SAP actuals, but MS Project was not really part of the equation then. Along the line, we merged with Questar and Scanna, which is when our project management office really continued to, or started to grow to the size it is today. We focus a huge amount on labor cost management. Labor is the biggest part of our of the expense on an awful lot of our projects, and we are very, very focused on capital labor. Capital, as important as it is in accounting in most organizations, in a regulated utility as we are, it's a really big deal because investment in capital drives an awful lot of what the regulators allow us in terms of return on investment. In terms of project numbers, we're always interested in just the basic, vital signs. What's the budget? In other words, what do we want to happen? What's the projection? What do we believe actually is going to happen? Does it match the budget? And the actuals, what have we spent to date? And then we're looking at that mostly from a vendor perspective, but from a labor perspective, vendor stuff, if we bring in an integrator like an Accenture or somebody, hardware and software, if we purchase a system like, MS Project Online, and then there are various surcharges and interest fees that we track in there as well. And we had really built out some pretty robust earned value based metrics, and I'll talk a little bit more about that further down. Some of the challenges. So although the old system was getting long in the tooth, it was difficult to use. It got duck a lot and we had to jiggle the handle to get it to download files and things. It worked. It had set expectations for what kind of data would be available. So we had to, when we started this project, we had to make sure we didn't leave anybody in the lurch with the new system. A real challenge for us was getting actual data from SAP, and this was the first big, I guess, crisis about our implementation. Was as we began to understand that our SAP actual data, in other words, if I charge an invoice from Accenture to my project, it doesn't go in at the task level. We only track in SAP up at the top project level. And there was no real easy way to spread that actual data down through the individual tasks in MS Project. So we spent a lot of time with Progility, and fortunately, Progility brought a lot of experience to the table on this and helped us understand what some other folks had done, which was simply not to, and there were a couple of ways to approach it. The way we chose was simply to not deal with the actuals in MS Project itself, but to integrate it all in Power BI, which I'll show you in just a minute. And the data model to do this got very complex as well, looking for key fields in SAP that we could match up with, you know, the project ID in our world, and matching that up with various, SAP calls them WBS numbers, but in our case, they're project numbers. Syncing the IT employee list was difficult. We had employees coming over from the Active Directory, but it didn't have all the information we needed. We need to pull some HR information from SAP. We had contractors in an entirely different system, so that was tricky. We had some security. We're an extremely security conscientious sort of company, and so getting this hybrid on-prem and cloud system to work together seamlessly had its challenges. Doing the migration, so we didn't really have the option of a sort of staged rollout. We had to get off of the old SharePoint system that our legacy system was based on. So we really had a fairly short window of time to get from our old system to our new system. And we had hundreds of projects that needed to be migrated out of hundreds of individual spreadsheets. I mentioned 100 users with a wide range of MS Project skills. Honestly, 10 of those 100 users were probably in the strong to expert level. Probably another 10 were casual users, and the rest of them avoided using MS Project at all costs if possible. So we had some work to do there. And then a challenge was Project Online didn't fit into any of our neat IT administrator center of excellence models. It's not quite a desktop app. It's not quite SharePoint. It's not quite a database. So we spent a lot of time wrangling responsibilities for system administration. Finally, and I didn't even think about it until the previous presentation, one additional challenge in my concurrent thing here was also, we're doing all this remotely under the COVID world. We had our PACE go live running at the same time that we had our merger with the SCANA PMO and pulling systems out of their Clarity system, and this big enterprise level SharePoint migration to the cloud. So a lot happening at once, but it made it exciting. Here's the architecture we ultimately came up with. I guess I'll start across the top here. Project Online or PWA, what I'm thinking of is the web portion of it. We've got all the project metadata there, you know, who's the sponsor, who's the director, who's the account manager, what business area, what strategic category, that kinds of stuff. And all the normal stuff you would do in a SharePoint setup for a project, including document libraries, lists of things like risks and issues and things like that. So we set all those up as templates in Project Online. Then in the client, we're using the client purely for forecasting. So we forecast labor, vendor, software, and hardware, and those numbers go in on a month-by-month granularity from beginning of the project to the end. SAP is pulling down the actual versions of those same numbers. So here's the forecast, here's what actually happened. We pull all that together in the Fragility Hammerhead Data Mart or data warehouse, which we are running on site. And then that drives our Power BI reporting. A little note over here to the side is it's really easy with Project Online to extract data for Excel and other data sets, but we just pull some real quick data out to Excel on a regular basis and have some scripts that run through there and look for things that we need to perhaps prod the project managers about. They might say nag. Have you updated your forecast within the last month? Do you have a project that should have started and is not showing a status of started yet? You've got some defunct team members in here. Do you need to replace those with people who are currently at the company? And so these QA and reminder emails go out just on a regular basis and are a big part of keeping everybody engaged and keeping the data quality high. Right. So here's just a quick little couple of snapshots out of screenshots. I've added a few more screenshots at the end. I won't walk through them, but they will be part of the presentation, which hopefully you guys can look at and see how we're running this thing. So each project has a primary MS Project Online instance, right? That's the way Project Online works, but we are using that online instance specifically for staffing forecasts and expenditure forecasts. And so here you see people going in and maybe pasting in hours by person or vendor expenses going in. We expect to pay a $45,000 invoice in April or whatever it is. And to do all this stuff, we started out asking all the users to do a lot of this stuff in native MS Project. And we quickly discovered that some of the project challenged folks were just not going to get there. So we stepped back and we built this toolbox in Visual Basic for Applications, VBA. And in essence, if you're a project manager and you need to get into MS Project to do these forecasts, everything you need to do is done by one of these buttons. So if you're doing something that doesn't start with one of those buttons, you shouldn't be doing it. So this makes it very easy for me to come in here. Apologize for the jargon. CLC in our world stands for capital labor credit. Just think labor there. If I need to add a person to my project, I just click this button, comes up here. I can type Ned Henson up here, find my name, and I can add Ned to my project at 20%, and it spreads the hours across there. Again, if we're doing on the expense side, if we've just signed a statement of work for a contract, fixed price, we might have delivery milestones. The project manager would enter those delivery milestones in the expense section. And then we have this publish, check-in, and close button. This actually does all the basic publish and check in just like project does, but this also puts a timestamp in a field so that I know the project manager has reviewed the project, and I can keep track of people who may need to get in and review, who may need additional training, any other kinds of issues people might be having. All right, that's a lot, but that's the meat and potatoes of the system from the project manager's perspective. A little side note here. So when we're talking about doing detailed Gantt chart, work breakdown structures, we actually are doing those in separate standalone MS project files that are uploaded to the SharePoint site for each project, not in the main system. Again, this gets back to that whole challenge with SAP actuals and not being able to spread those actuals across these tasks. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So our rationale for making the decisions that we did, first, we're running a lot of different kinds of projects. We're running big Gantt chart type application projects where our project manager builds a big project plan, schedule, and executes to it. We have vendors doing project plans and running projects from outside our system. We have infrastructure projects that are kind of cookie cutter that are just run out of Excel checklists and things like that. So we are not assigning tasks to individual people out of MS Project currently. And then what? Oh, yeah, in a lot of ways, we had to build the system so that we could get, if you will, the least common denominator of information out of every single project, no matter what kind of project it was. And so we had to build for the simplest case. So that, again, that drove a lot of our rationale here. Couple other things. We knew that doing time entry in MS Project was not going to be, would not really work here. Our time entry is very complicated. There's some regulatory aspects to it. It's done in SAP, and we weren't going to attack that. If we weren't really ready to. Here we go. We weren't really ready to bring all the team members in as users yet, because we're talking about training and change management for hundreds of people rather than just the project managers that we were working with. So these were the choices we made, and in hindsight, I think we would make the same ones. So how did we get people to adopt it? We started with fragility-driven training. Grace was doing the training for us. She had also done our implementation. She was patient beyond words, and we had one person who took, I believe we offered 10 instances of the all-day MS Project training, and I believe this person took all 10. And then we focused in on lots of reinforcement training. We as we learned where people were having trouble, we would circle back and provide mini classes for that. We would do little half-hour mini sessions once a week and sort of help desk where people could drop in and we would answer questions and so forth. We did job aids that we focused in on just, help. I need to get started. How do I do that? And here's a job aid for that. The toolbox was a big deal. The simplified approach and just thinking about we need to update hundreds of project forecasts every month. This needs to be simple, fast, and not burdensome to the project managers. And one really helpful thing here was the fact that because our directors and sponsors and account managers were already used to seeing budget numbers and projection numbers, forecasts, and performance stuff, they already had an expectation. So if they didn't see something, they were going to help me push the project managers to get the data in, get it up to date, and keep it accurate. The automated QA checks were a big deal, and constant nagging. If we weren't here noticing when people don't update things, I think there would be pockets of places where people were not being as attentive to the data as we would like. A couple of things for going forward. We'd really like to get back to some of the earned value metrics that we had before. These were important. So this is an earned value graph below for just an individual project, and it shows, here's what we're trying to hit. Each of these is an annual budget that gets us there. Here's the money we've actually spent. Here's the money we're planning to spend. Here's the work we've gotten done. It was a very good tool to sit down with a sponsor and say, here's been the history of this project. Here's what it looks like. And you can see right now our forecast has us landing on budget about the end of the December of 2019. So we hope to reestablish some of that kind of stuff. And I think we'll be able to do that with Power BI. Just because we set this stuff up without the individual team members in project and without the Gantt chart and schedules in project, there's nothing in there that precludes us from putting that stuff in. And we'd like to start to do some pilots where we really build the full MS project plan out, find out what works and what doesn't, and see if it's something we might want to push out more. That'll be mostly our serious top 10 project managers with that. And I would expect us to always have some sort of hybrid environment with that. We got a few tweaks to the toolbox and reporting. The reporting came from Fragility, really almost ready to go. And then we've been doing some tweaking since then as we learn some subtleties in the numbers and get some user feedback about, oh, we'd like to see this differently, and just other ideas we've had. And then finally, one of the things we're going to have to look at is data archiving. We used to run into issues in our old system with SharePoint exceeding a certain threshold and performance would struggle. And we have so many projects in the system already that we really want to start to offline some of the older completed material, canceled projects and so forth. All right, I believe that is it just for your entertainment. I've included a few screenshots of sanitized for our protection of just what the system looks like when people are in there, what some of our Power BI dashboards look like. And some labor stuff. Again, when you see CLC, capital labor credit, and some forecasting or resource utilization and forecasting there. So I believe that is it. Sarah, I will turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Great presentation, Ned. Thank you for sharing with us today. So that leaves us to Q&A for Nina, Rinky, and Ned. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A chat box and I will read them aloud. So I guess this is a question for everybody. If you could do one thing differently about your deployment, what would it be? Ned, did you want to go ahead and go first?
If I knew now what I knew then, I would have had a different initial. I think our conversations with Fragility would have been about a much simpler initial target. And I think the key in my mind is that it is better to intend, or it's better to actually walk a mile a day than it is to intend to run 10 miles, right? So set a reasonable goal, reasonable target, keep it simple in the beginning, and let the complexity evolve rather than start with the grand vision.
Awesome, thanks, Ned. And same question for Nina and Rinky.
Yeah, I think from our end, if I could do one thing over, I would have had much deeper conversations with the directors about resource management. That's something we struggle with, and then I'll pass it to Rinky.
I agree with you, Nina. I think if we had, first of all, more time in our implementation, we would have taken a much deeper look into resource management and had, made more progress rolling that out to each individual vertical. That's the only thing I can also think of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. And for both of you as well, have you used Project Online with Agile and or DevOps?
Very good question. We are looking into that. We have built, I would say, a hybrid schedule in PWA where the tasks still rest in DevOps, which is what we use. But we have not integrated with DevOps, if that was the question. No, but we have built hybrid schedules in PWA.
Mm-hmm. I think as I think about the CIO and the governing aspect of this portfolio, a few things we learned is centrally mandating the practice has not been successful. So we would never obviously tell the developers they needed to shift to a waterfall approach. And so the best way to do this is to get insight into the work so we can build, get some takeaways and some understanding of our resources as it relates to intake, but also how do we give visibility into the work that the developers are doing, as well as the work being done by the vertical directors, which is a lot of integrations, data flows, and our largest portfolio is infrastructure, because I noted in one of those slides how large the landscape is. So there's got to be a way to build a Power BI dashboard that allows visibility into all of the work being done. So we're trying to figure that out without changing the practice of the developers and the sprints and the teams over there that the CTO has. That's too hard for us. Honestly, we would never probably successfully do that. So, and nobody wants to, right? We need to kind of move toward a more agile delivery. So that's how I would answer that.
Thanks, Nina. And for Santa Clara, how are you handling monthly status reports? Do you have something built out in Project Online?
So we don't do monthly. We actually have mandated our PMs report weekly, and we have built a paginated report in Power BI or an editable report in Power BI, which pulls the status from PWA, but allows the PM to edit the slides, add more information, and send it out to the stakeholders. And also the stakeholders also have access to Power BI, so they are able to look at the report themselves. So that's what we are doing.
Yeah, and I think to that point, we're trying to get away from monthly reports or any kind of like quarterly portfolio reviews, yes, but we want everybody to be able to speak the language of the dashboard. So we really encourage people to brief off the dashboards anytime they want to take a look at the sub portfolios and the enterprise portfolios, and also just get comfortable with speaking that language. So we make it a point when people show up with decks to say, well, you know, is it in the tool? Because we'd rather have you brief up the tool. But again, it's difficult to change the practices, but just continue being committed to that. So
that sounds pretty familiar to me too. We generally encourage project manager. Most of our project managers have a monthly meeting with a sponsoring IT director, and so they'll talk from the dashboards that we've got put together in Power BI.
All right, thank you guys. And could you both share approximately what the count and roles of the support team are? Or the support team that supports the tools and the users?
Mine's pretty brief. So we have a PMO back office staff that includes me and two other people who help with capitalization accounting and so on and so forth. And we are all recovering developers. So we also build out parts of the system.
Thanks, Ned.
So for us also in Santa Clara, it's a very small team. It is a team of 4 who manages all the tickets. So we have enforced a rule that all requests have to come in through a formal ticketing process. We use Cherwell for our ticketing system, and we have created our own resolver group. So those tickets are sent to our group. So it's a team of 4, to answer your question, that manages the tickets, handles any issues. We have our data analyst on the team who's a Power BI expert also, who manages issues with reporting, creating new reports. And I'm also part of that resolver group, helping with tickets, etc.
Thanks, Rinki. And could you both share some insight on how much time you think it would take for someone to plan a migration? And should an organization migrate schedules themselves, or let a company like Progility handle the in-flight project migration?
Well, it all depends on the maturity of your organization. Like I said, we had Progility help us because we did not really have an effective PPM tool before. And we had PMs who did not even have schedules built in MPP format. So it depends on the maturity of your organization, depends on what shape your projects are in currently. If PMs are mature enough, they know how to create accurate schedules in Microsoft Project, then yes, it can be done in-house. You can import the schedules and create projects directly. But if you do not have that, it is a much bigger lift, which was the case for us. And how much time all depends on how many projects, depends on the depth and the width of the portfolio, depends on the scope. It's very hard to tell. We did ours in 7 months, including holidays. It was a huge lift. It was a very stressful time for the project team, but it worked because of our approach, as we shared before. So all depends on your organization's current state.
And in our world, we had Progility migrate our system was in two parts. We had all the project metadata, the project lists were in SharePoint, and then the project detailed labor vendor stuff was in Excel. So we had Progility migrate the SharePoint part of this and get our new SharePoint environment, or I'm sorry, our new MS Project Online environment stood up. And then we wrote some VBA scripts that would migrate the Excel stuff into MS Project. And our entire implementation, same, probably about 7 months from the time we signed the contract.
Thanks, Ned. And I think we have time for one more question for each of you. For someone planning out a deployment for next year, what's the one thing you'd recommend to make sure that an organization does or doesn't do?
Well, I would recommend go for the paginated reporting. I mean, in my dream, I would think everybody could just brief off dashboards, but that's just not how executives behave. So you have to spend the money to get the paginated reporting, because you know, it's like a bridge to a future. So I would invest in that.
And for us, I would say, so we are getting heavily into Power BI just after our PMO project. The PMO project was Dominion's first foray into Power BI, and it's stunningly powerful, and so I would recommend leaning on it a lot. We're getting a whole lot more out of it than we expected to.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your time. Nina, Rinky, Ned, those were great presentations. And thanks everyone for your questions.